talk to animals. My name is Shannon Cutts. I'm an animal intuitive and sensitive, aka an animal communicator and a Reiki master practitioner here at animallovelanguages.com. This is Pearl Cutts. For those of you who are listening, not watching the video version, you just heard a little chirp. This is my nearly 24-year-old avian sidekick, and he co-hosts with me, although today it's under duress because he just wants to nap again. This is what happens when the days get shorter and the nights get longer. And today on Let's Talk to Animals, we have Diane Budd all the way from Cape Town, South Africa. She is joining us today to talk about intuitive animal communication, zoopharmacognosy, which I sure hope I pronounced right. I love words but after a certain number of syllables, it starts to get a little more complicated. And we're in our third season, even though we're really young podcast and vlogcast, we're already in our third season because there's just so much to talk about. And there's so many amazing professionals to explore, what are all the different ways that we can help animals. And most importantly, after 2 seasons spent really kind of de-wooing and demystifying animal communication itself, we're taking a look this season at what happens when an animal brings up an unmet need, a health issue, maybe an emotional or a trauma issue, or just something going on in their lives where it just doesn't feel like things are flowing smoothly. What next? What happens? Because on the communication end of things, what's going to happen is once I relay the information from the animal, for those of you out there who are listening or watching, you're intuitive communicators. Once you relay that information to the pet carer or guardian or the FOSCU or the rescue or shelter manager, inevitably you're going to get the question coming right back to you. Well, what do I do about it? Who do I turn to? Where do I go? And so this season we are tackling that question head on, and I have invited Diane to come today to the show and talk about the extremely interesting, I was just sharing with Diane before we press record here that I have just been scouring all of her website. I'm so fascinated by the idea that our animals have this innate wisdom that they can actually recognize elements and agents and natural sources of healing in their immediate environments if they have the resources to do so. And of course, in the wild, they do. In a captive setting where they're serving as our companion animals or our work buddies and partners, maybe not so much. So I'm going to stop talking because nobody joined this podcast today to listen to me talk about zoopharmacognosy. They are here. You guys are here to listen to Diane and to hear more about how you have woven together what many might feel are essentially unlike disciplines and have found the common thread. So I want to say welcome, and
thank you very much.
So happy to have you. And of course, as we chatted about briefly just before I press record, I always like to invite our guests to start by just sharing a little bit about your personal story. How did you come to this work? Why is it so important to you? And how has it changed your life?
Okay.
It's a big one, right?
At the beginning. And I think for me, it's just the love of plants and a love of animals. And, I am a gardener. I'm forever trying to grow anything that I can possibly lay my hands on. And of late, it's been gifts from clients where I've spotted something and I know I can use it. And obviously then the love of animals. And I think things really changed for me after the birth of my second son when I was in my 30s. And it seemed to open up a portal where I started questioning a lot. And I studied metaphysics for about 3 years, and that is psychology of the soul. It was energy healing, all different types of modalities. And in that time that I did an animal communication workshop. And I think one of my greatest, I'd say that's pushed me from behind, has been my skepticism, because I did not believe this for 1 minute. I did not believe that you could see the aura. I did not believe that you could see somebody that had passed over in front of you. So as when I started out in this field, it was my skepticism. If all this is possible, then prove it to me. All right. And that's exactly what happened. As your intuition grows, you experience things at a different level. So I could see the aura, I could see energy move. And so things just grew and grew and grew. And I think the first time I ever spoke to one of my own animals was where I got into trouble from her. You know, it was one of those evenings where I woke up at 3 o'clock and I thought, right, perfect. There's nobody around. I'll start practicing because I couldn't get back to sleep. And I woke her up and she started barking, but that cross barking, you know, leave me alone. And she reprimanded me, as she should have, for waking her up for a chat in the middle of the night. And then, of course, I was too excited to go back to sleep. And that just changed everything for me. And one thing led to another. And then I was doing animal communication for about 5-6 years. And I found that it limited me. I'm a problem solver. And if somebody presents a problem to me, I like to be able to solve it in the best way possible. And a lot of things were coming up where I couldn't solve it because I just didn't have the tools to be able to do it. It's like giving a mechanic a car and he's missing 3 spanners. He can't adequately do his job unless he finds those missing spanners. And that's what it felt like to me. So I started, I came across a story about a Russian woman living in Russia, and she took a horse for a walk, and the horse was ill at the time, and they selected various herbs along the way. They gathered them. The horse went back to the homestead. They carried on offering the herbs. The horse ate it, and until such time that the horse stopped eating, all of a sudden it was better because it obviously had been selecting a variety of medications. And for me, that was life-changing. I read that and I thought, that's what I want to do. I don't know how I'm going to do it. And I don't know what it entails, but that's what I want to do. Anyway, long story short, I then read Elizabeth White's book. And then I discovered Caroline Ingram. And she's the founder of zoopharmacognosy. And it's zoo, which means animals, pharma, which means medicinal, cognosy, which means intuitive knowing. All right, so that's that horrible long word, which I sometimes just rename self-selection. And yes, and
which the rest of us deeply appreciate, by the way.
Yes. And then I just started combining the two together. I think initially I prefer to sit at home behind a computer and work with animals in that way. And the self-selection part really forced me to do one-on-one sessions using oils and using my intuition in a different way. So I very much became acutely aware of sensations in my body, even more so than when I was in front of a computer. And it was absolutely life-changing, and I could combine the two. And not only that, is I could see. So I could watch the energy field and I could see the transformation that was happening. And that led me to write the book. Because I started, when you acutely become aware of different things, you do some research, what I do, because I want to understand it. Where does it come from? What does it look like? What am I seeing? And there was a beautiful book written by Barbara Ann Brennan called Hands of Light. But that's for humans. What's there for animals? So I wasn't happy with the content that was out there. And so I decided to write the book. And it took me about 2.5 years of research, of countless case studies over and over and over again, until I had enough material, and I put everything together. I looked at the synchronicities and I started writing my book, Energy Medicine for Animals. And I haven't looked back since. That is basically, in a nutshell, my intro.
It's amazing to think of how our intuition will give us these inner prompts to say, that's it. That's the thing. And that's the first step. And I love that you, even with the skepticism that, and I feel that, I don't know, I grew up in the Christian tradition. I wouldn't necessarily say that I uh, particularly resonate with any kind of discipline at this point or any kind of particular path, but I always really found the doubting Thomas, the parables about the doubting Thomas quite refreshing. And I thought, there's nothing wrong with asking for proof. There's nothing wrong with questioning. There's a place for that. There's an opportunity to know thyself better. And so there's nothing wrong with coming at it from a perspective of, I trust myself enough to believe that I will feel for myself when something resonates as true. And those of you who may be listening that are feeling either overwhelmed by all of your options or feeling like, I just don't know, this isn't really a thinking thing. I mean, there is the knowledge gathering phase. We give ourselves enough information to work from, but then it has to shift at some point to a feeling thing. And I love how in your story you share just moving from one step to the next. You're saying, okay, this is the thing. I want to do it. I don't know how, but I'm making this commitment. And then slowly but surely, and then finally here you are. I have to laugh when you share that, respectfully laugh when you share that it took 2.5 years to research, and then I'm sure write your book. And then there's all the, the publishing and the marketing and the little details and the editing and the graphics and all the different things. And my literary agent used to say, nobody writes a book because they want to. They write a book because they need to, because it is not easy.
And I think it's a gift of love that you can give to everybody else. Because if you were writing, well, in South Africa, if you wrote a political book about the politics of South Africa, you would do extremely well. But the esoteric market has changed fundamentally over the years and has subsided. So if you want answers, you've got to somehow find them somewhere, which makes it extremely difficult. And not only that, I think, as I said, I wrote the book because I couldn't find the answers, but the answers were in me. And I really hope that somebody else takes what I've done and builds on that. But you write a book as a gift for everybody else to share. It's not about money, especially in this field. It's not about getting your name out there. It's just about, this is how I understand it. This is my interpretation of it. Here we go.
The beautiful expression of finding not just the patience and the discipline and the time, but the ongoing motivation, the deep indwelling motivation because it's also an act of brave. I mean, you're putting yourself out there. So like it has to come from a place of an inner recognition of, I have a gift that I want to offer. I have something to share. I have a perspective I believe is unique and will be useful. And so and that I feel gets us through some of the, the dark. I remember early in my own writing process, one of my mentors left a book called Bird by Bird by Anne Lamott on my desk one day. And she talked about, writing that crappy first draft and just, it doesn't, we don't have to be the best writer. We don't have to do it perfectly, but let's just take those small daily steps. And so that's, it's extremely important. So let's talk a little bit more about what it is. What is your gift? If you could in your book, what gift are you sharing? If you could unwrap it a little bit more, help people understand self-selection, self-medication. How does it work and how can it help their animal?
All right. So how it works, how I use it is I use my intuitive ability to feel what the animal is feeling. And that I call a body scan. So I pick up whether it's a painful ear or a sore toe. So that is fundamentally what I do, besides the obviously the you know, just the normal chit chat and everything else that comes through and what's important, and don't climb this curtain, but go on to that patio, and you know, but for me, I like healing in a physical aspect. So yes, when your horse is starting to colic, what do you do? So now I know exactly what to do and how to do it. It's like I have the first aid kit, and my first aid kit is plant extracts, but it's also emotional extracts. So earlier on today, I was working with a Siamese cat, and for the last 4 years, he's been crying nonstop at certain points in the house, and he's been spraying on some of the furniture. And when I worked with him, we figured out that he immediately spoke about a female that had left the area about three years ago, and he was absolutely heartbroken, and he preferred the old house to the new house. So there'd been quite a lot of big changes for this poor guy, and he wasn't really doing well with it. So then I would look at my kit, and I would know, right, sandalwood essential oil is for animals who battle with anxiety and fear. Here is a cat who's very fearful. So I open up a bottle and I give it to him. And then I would balance it with something else. So he's got a battle of self-confidence. I would offer him ylang ylang, or hops as a sedative, or so ultimately, and then I'd watch his reaction. Does he just sniff it like this? Or does he immediately, when I take out a bottle, did he turn around and leave the room? No, he didn't. He sat there quite comfortably for about 15 minutes, smelling all my different oils, which is very unusual for a cat. With a cat, you normally only get about, I'd say 3 to 5 minutes, but he was really intense on all the bottles. So what I ideally did is I was looking for a remedy to help the owner, because very often, and the cat, honestly, very often we know what's wrong with the animals. We have a sense of, and as we're talking, the owner says, I knew it. I knew he had a lack of self-confidence. I knew he was feeling fearful, but she didn't know how she could help him in order to overcome it. And obviously that's where I come in. So what I was able to do was to leave her with a couple of oils to carry on selecting for the next couple of weeks. And then we also picked up 1 or 2 hip issues. And again, leaving the owner with 1 or 2 extracts. This not only empowers the owner, because it makes them feel like they're doing something. And then when you're also working, very often vets will ask me for a consult and say to me, they have an animal with experiencing the following conditions. Can I possibly give them some feedback? Or they need to know where in the body to look. And that's where I come in. So it's a very broad field, and I think flexibility is key. With regards to people's own animals, start looking what's in your kitchen cupboards. If you're sitting with your cat on your lap and all of a sudden you feel as though you're feeling a little bit nauseous, you're feeling uneasy, and you know that you're fine, there should be no reason for you to feel nauseous, or what are you going to do? So start looking at things you've got in your cupboard. Do you have any essential oils? Do you know anything about them? Research before you do it. Or make a cup of tea. Make a cup of tea. Animals like tea. If it's nausea, then I'd often say to the owner, we'll make a cup of peppermint tea and just let the animal smell it. So it's quite a specialized field, but really the fundamental, I'd say, of the first aid kit, in brackets, starts at home to see what you've got in your cupboard.
It's interesting because, and you also touch on an intersecting energetic, what do they call it? Vector point, which is how the animal's energy and perhaps the guardian or the carer's energy often overlaps. And I was intrigued by what you said about how you're really searching for a solution or for a remedy for that cat's person. And I'm curious if you often see, and I've actually got a specific case study example in my own family. I'm curious if you ever see or find that the animal and their person benefit from the same.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we also reflect our own issues, as you know, very often the animal will have a sore knee, and so will the owner have a sore knee. So they're giving us messages all the time, not only about our own body, but about their body. So the owner will say to me, "Oh, is it me or is it you?" And then it's, okay, hold on, let me touch you. It's you, but let me touch the animal. No, it's more him today. You know, and doing so, we can help both.
So can there be a case where they actually are kind of bopping it back and forth, where it's almost like it's a hot potato. You can't really.
Yeah.
Is there a way to actually resolve it, or is this constant kind of ping pong game where?
Well,
Or is that a process of education where both have to kind of learn how to just let it go
and disassociate from each other? And I think, isn't that where us humans sometimes we forever saying to other people boundaries, you know? And yet if you say to somebody with regards to their animals, they like look at you like something's wrong. Because we do take things on, and especially us that are intuitive and that are empaths. This is my job. This is what I do. This is what I have to do in order to do a good job. But it does become difficult. So I have to learn to turn it on and off, not very successfully at a lot of times. And you've got to try explain to the owner that they shouldn't do that as well. And that the minute that they start feeling better, the animal will start feeling better. And that gives them hope, and that gives them a little bit of motivation to maybe do something about it.
I have often found that I will encounter, a human who is maybe panicked or just very stressed or anxious or fearful around their animal. And this connection that they have to the animal, it creates a window of opportunity or openness to something new, where maybe even in their own life they would be like, oh, I wouldn't even pursue feeling better for myself, or in that area I wouldn't, oh, I think that's really woo or really out there.
Yes.
But after so many different things haven't helped their animal and they become kind of desperate, and that creates this openness, and then they're willing to try the new woo thing or whatever it is for the sake of this love and this bond they have with their animal. And I'm a little curious because, or a lot curious actually, because of course we've got folks from all walks of life who listen in, who tune into this podcast. And so you mentioned working with vets, which I love, and I love that you have vets that are open and are eager to learn a complementary modality and learn what you have to offer. But for somebody that's listening in and isn't really sure where to start, maybe, because you and I were maybe have been aware for many, many, many moons that we're empaths, that we're intuitive, our pathways are open. We're kind of like, yeah, I get what's going on here. We at least can tune in relatively quickly. I feel like a lot of pet guardians, they don't realize that their intuition is kicking in. They don't. So it's
I think so too.
Know it, but then yeah.
For me, a lot of people listen to respond. They don't listen to hear. In our job, we listen to hear. All right. And then we don't respond. We serve as a mediator between the animal and the client. And I think what for me has been the turning point, especially when it comes to vets. I've had vets and vet assistants and doctors and anesthetists and chiropractors from everyone from all walks of life who've done a workshop with me. I've even had a vet now who is changing to do this.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
and
phenomenal.
They're able to incorporate it into their practice. So I would walk into one of the yards. I walked into the yard the other day, and one of the vets was there. And because we run into each other all the time at certain of the liveries, He's become very curious. And one of the cases was presented itself, and he says to me, right, what do you pick up? Because he had just worked on the horse before me. So you're like, oh, bite the bullet, really put on the spot. And the horse presented with stomach issues. And I shared it. And then I shared a selection of oils to help the horse respond to that. And one of the strongest sponsors he gave was cinnamon bark. Now, bark is one of the best things that a horse or a dog can eat because it fluffs up in the stomach and toxins adhere to it and then it passes out in the stools. And he saw for himself. And then he said to me, right, and why do you think it is? And because we in South Africa, we've transitioned from spring and now we're at the start of summer. We've got a heck of a large amount of pollens and it always affects stomachs. And that is one of the reasons. So it wasn't because of water, because they normally say to me, my water's changed, it tastes disgusting, and my stomach's not feeling good. And in this case, it wasn't the case. So it's been nice to work alongside people who've been able to witness firsthand how that animal's responding. And then he obviously said to me, okay, I would have given this, and this, but where can I buy that oil? See, this is where it comes in. Or when's your next course or something like that. I definitely don't, with the self-selection, we will never ever replace a vet. Vet is always, if your animal is in pain or anything's wrong, I will always say to people, go to the vet. But double check, does your animal respond to carrot seed? Does it respond to this? Or what do you have in your cupboard that you could offer the animal that could confirm what you are feeling? And then that's the way to change people's mindsets.
Important. Yeah. And I love, it's interesting to me how, the vet may code that into the inner Rolodex. Okay, maybe go and try cinnamon bark or go try this other remedy that they've seen, but also remembering that each animal is unique and you place so much structure around, okay, what's going on in that animal's immediate environment? What's the season like? What's the environment doing? What are all the different elements that could be at play? And this is where it feels like, it's so easy to get up into our heads and just kind of get really overwhelmed and recognize the value, the point at where the intuition has to come in. And that conversation needs to take place as well with the animal. And the fact, just knowing that it's possible, just knowing, wait a minute, I could actually ask the patient, quote unquote, and get a firsthand account of actually what's going on in their world. And then also I feel like a lot of my work as well in animal communication is that animal's person has information but they don't realize they have it. And so also extending the dialogue back to that animal's human and sharing what we get and seeing kind of what lands, what resonates with them to produce, because that is a cool moment when the animal's human will say, I knew it. And you're like, oh, really? Let's talk about that. So it's almost equally cool when it's a total shock and the person, or even our fellow practitioner is blown away by something that has worked. And yet also it's a really cool phenomenon when somebody is like, oh man, I was feeling, and then that provokes this curiosity to kind of take it one step further and really creating new conversations in the community. And I love that you are doing things in person. I mean, for the last year and a half or so, it has often felt like that's off limits. And for somebody who really has, me personally, I went for it during the pandemic. And so most of my interactions, the vast majority have been, and also be the nature of my work, I don't need to be in person, but there can feel like there's something extra that you get when you're able to be in person. And also, I'm curious about, because different, like I've had some experiences with applied kinesiology and trigger points at local toxins or local environmental triggers or pollen, like you mentioned pollen. So it feels like that's a case where being very aware of what's going on in your local environment. Do you ever find that there are changes based on the remedy that you would offer, and even something as specific as in this meadow, what's what is the feed, or what pollens are ringing the meadow, or things like that? And I mean, how does that work, where it's like you have this general toolkit, but then you have to get kind of granular at some point?
For me, is I pick up the changes in what's being selected. And it will be like I'll have 6 months of a lot of animals selecting garlic and thyme. And for me, that's bacterial infections. Okay. And then all of a sudden it's changed. And the season has been clay, carrot seed, and cinnamon bark. So, and then what's going on? So like now, for instance, I know that our pollens have changed from trees, and now we're now experiencing grass, our grass pollens. And so I'm really going into the busiest time of year, especially with allergies. But yes, all of that definitely does have an effect. But it's seeing what they select, and then the change that happens tells me what's going on.
And is it quick? Do you normally for a pet carer who's like, oh my God, this is an emergency situation or whatever, it's like, what could they kind of be looking for in terms of when you leave or when you're, what do I look for? How do I know?
I think with any animal, the first thing to look for is look at their body language. Let's be honest. so that is key. Are their eyes droopy? Look at their gums. Has the gums changed? Do you think they have a temperature? A lot of people don't even know how to look at a temperature. So your body language displays everything. Does the animal look distressed? Is he down? Just look at your animal. That's the first thing that you do. And that will guide you and tell you so much about what's going on. And then take it an extra further. Right, so my animal's looking down. Is it emotional or is it physical? Oh, he looks a bit uncomfortable because he keeps on lying down on his side and sighing. Maybe it's physical. Right, it's physical. Now, what has he eaten? Did he eat duck poo on the walk on the way home? Or did he get lost and stuck in a bush and I'm not quite sure what happened in the bush? So okay, now, then examine the body. Watch the animal walk. I'm now referring to a dog. Does he hold his paw funny? Turn the paws over, put your finger in between all the pads. Look at his gums. Are his gums nice and healthy and pink, or has they changed? So it's all those small little things that can make a difference. But it's like building a puzzle. Whether you do this on Zoom or you do this in present. And I think for me, I was very fortunate enough during the COVID time and the pandemic that I was able to be out on the road, and I was allowed to practice, especially when you were involved in the animal field, especially in Cape Town. Yes. But now it also forced me to broaden my mind a little bit and do Zoom sessions, just like we're doing over here now. And now having to pass that knowledge on to people who are in Berlin, or they've got an anxious dog in Spain. How do you help people like that? And again, now I've got a problem solved. How do you explain to people, this is what you do and this is the way how do you do it? And I think, thank heavens, I've got enough behavioral experience, and there are certain things that everybody can do. So it's not just a question of me going to see an animal. The distance sessions are fundamentally, they are different. And I think with Zoom, it's changed everything. People want to see you. I think after being cut off from COVID, we now thrive on communication. They just want to see the face behind the email. And it's made our lives a lot easier because we don't have to type anymore.
Yeah, that's so true. Speaking as a professional freelance writer, that's just sometimes I think to myself, I got up and my primary interaction for the day has been this little rectangular gizmo that I've been interfacing with for 10 hours. It's like it's craziness.
Yeah.
So this feels like a perfect moment to actually talk about, because folks may be listening and thinking, maybe we've got a vet listening, maybe we have an energy practitioner listening, maybe we have a pet parent or an animal communicator listening, thinking, I want to learn more. I want to learn how to apply this with my animal, with the animals I serve, or I just want Diane to help me. I mean, sometimes there's just honestly this element of support when we get on Zoom and we see the person's face and just receiving encouragement that is so vital, as well as guidance. And so I'd love it if you could share your recommendations for how people can work with you and how they can study with you, because I know you do both. And of course, then we have your book as well.
Yes.
But what is it like? How do people get in touch with you and connect?
The best way is to do a workshop. If you are in South Africa, it's one of the easiest ways, because you meet like-minded people and ultimately friendships are made. And I also mentor several people. And for those that are in other countries, they can do a workshop online. I think for me, what is different is a lot of animal communicators, they've all done level 1 or maybe even level 2, where my advanced animal communication is about finding different spheres. And I think this has been quite important, because we all are very good at something. And yes, a lot of people can talk to an animal, but are you good at animal tracking? Are you good at animal healing? Are you good at, as a medical intuitor, where do your strengths lie? And for me, in my advanced animal communication workshop, that's what we touch on. And I send you cases and you send reports back so that I can see the level that you're on. And then we could discuss it going forward. Because it's not only animal communication. There's different modalities to that. And I think that's so important, where somebody might not actively experience actually talking to an animal one-on-one, but they can heal very well. And that's their strength. And that's where they can apply themselves. And then, the rest, so is history. So yes, that both I have do online courses that run, or we can do Zoom sessions like this. They can just go onto my website and take it from there.
Yeah, and that is so key, because it does feel like there's this real, I kind of feel, and I've been using this phrase these days, that we're kind of in a wild west of intuitive interspecies communication. We're kind of exploding, and Zoom has, as you said, changed everything, because there's so many more opportunities to study and to match with a mentor or teacher or educator that really we feel is right. And we can study with so many different people. And I do feel like so many of the beginning, maybe the level 1 level communicators, maybe level 2, that there's a real desire to know, where do I fit in? How can I serve? And a real recognition that it's really not about comparison anymore. Oh, you get it this way. Oh, I get it that way. It's about, not everybody sees auras and people feel them. It's like you, I get a lot of physical sensations in my body, which can be very scary when it first happens. You don't realize it's coming, it's like, just so the shaping of the unique gift, the pathways that are open, and then also desire to advance and to continue opening and continue deepening. And so those of you who are listening and you just aren't quite sure, where do I fit? Or how can I serve? Or what do I even want to do? that sounds like a really perfect opportunity, and definitely the book as well, to really learn more. I just don't feel like there's any replacement or substitute for personal story. Just sometimes the way that we get to know ourselves best is by listening to the stories of others. And it feels like this is part of the culture that maybe Zoom, maybe podcasting, maybe that's why it's so popular right now. It's, in addition to books, because, we live in a speedy generation where we can consume so much, and we just have to, it's hard to sit down and even read a whole book. So I really want to thank you for donating your time and coming on Let's Talk to Animals today. I want to remind those of you who are listening, the website, and I'll put it in the show notes as well, is healinganimals.co. Z as in zebra, A as in animal. And that's how you can find Diane. Very much appreciative of your amazing gifts and your perseverance, and brave to share your gifts with all of us. And for those of you who have found us for the first time, delighted to have you. Thank you for your interest in interspecies intuitive animal communication. Of course, we're all animals, so isn't it cool to realize that there is a universal language that we can all share in common? Of course, we're the students here. Our animals are really they're the ones that are fluent. And so if you've found us, maybe you're landing here for the first time, not only have you picked a wonderful episode to start with, to learn about Diane and her amazing work, but I also want you to know that we are into our third season. I think I've interviewed more than 65 communicators, energy healers, light workers, and amazing practitioners in the field. And if you want to learn more, you can always head over to animallovelanguages.com/podcast. You can find all of our episodes. You can re-listen to this episode, find it on your favorite podcast platform. Watch us on YouTube if you'd like, and learn more about really what's going on in this Wild West field today. So thank you again, Diane. Thank you to you, our dear listeners and viewers. Oh, so delighted and so grateful to have this opportunity myself. I tell you what, if I could just clone myself, I always want to study with every single person I interview, and I'm like, how can I do it? It keeps me forever in student mode with the empty cup, which is a wonderful place to be. And
if you ever come to South Africa,
I love it.
You can happily spend a couple of days with me, and I'll show you the ropes.
I would love it. I would love it. I would. Yes, I would. Mm-hmm. Although I'd miss
and it's very interesting as well, because it works with wild animals as well, as you know. That's the self-selection part as well.
Well, so I would imagine it's absolutely brilliant to watch wild animals
very rewarding
doing their thing.
Yep.
That's a whole other conversation. That is a whole other conversation for sure. So, and you've got a few videos on your website as well, and probably I don't know if you put out a newsletter or if you have socials where you share a little bit more. I know.
I put it on Facebook, and that's about it. My time isn't my own.
I hear you.
And,
I hear you.
Yeah.
Yep. And we gotta just take our opportunities when we can. I will definitely put your Facebook in the show notes as well. Thank you again, Diane.
Thank you, Anya.
And thank you so much, our listeners and our viewers. Please join us every week, Wednesday morning. A new episode airs, and we look forward to welcoming you back to Let's Talk to Animals. Okay, all of our love.
Thank you.
And bye for now.